Hello, my name's Craig Seibert, and this short webinar is titled Systems of Government, the Secular Socialist Model. They're very close together, and we'll take a look at that now. So to begin with, the Secular Socialist Model, it emphasizes the rule of man, and I mean that in the terms of humankind, men and women, but the rule of mankind with no outside resource or help, because God's been dispensed from the picture. And so leaders in this kind of setup interpret and write the Constitution. They communicate to the people kind of what the plans are and what the laws are. The people do have some feedback loop, but not nearly as robust as some of the other constitutional republic and the U.S. structure particularly allow. Also because this really emphasizes the ability of experts and rulers to plan. They have a lot to say about how civil society should be run, that the church should either be private with their faith, or if they're involved in civil society, what the boundaries are, how families should behave, and individual behavior as well. And so this frequently drifts toward planned society, ruled by experts. The Constitution means what the leaders say it means, and there's no higher law to appeal to because God's been dispensed with. So government dictates what is allowed in each of the spheres. So this will lead to a rule by a governing elite. It will make a law arbitrary because the Constitution, if there is one, is whatever the leaders say it is, and ultimately this is the path to tyranny. Now it's worth noting, and I don't mean to make an offense by making this statement, but the world leaders who like this system of government came from these walks of life. I'm not saying that they started this system of government, but Marxist, Communist, and National Socialist leaders all like this system of government because God had been dispensed with. Marx, Lenin, Hitler, Mao, and Castro all like this system of government, again, because the God factor isn't there. So I don't say this to offend, but that's what the reality is. Now, just to further this point, let me illustrate how vastly different this form of government is from the American experiment. And so I'll work backwards from how the United States governing structure was designed to work and show you what remains. And so if you've watched the U.S. Constitutional Republic webinar, you will have seen this displayed. So to work backwards to a secularist government, you've got to remove the God factor. And so these would be the components that you'd need to remove. You'd need to remove the Declaration of Independence because it appeals to God as creator, as nature's God, and as supreme judge of the universe. If you remove the Declaration, you need to remove the biblical concepts of civil society, the Bible itself, God as a person as far as an influence or anything relevant to civil society. So all that influence that the church or Christian leaders or Christians themselves should have begin to be removed. All this other stuff that's written on here about the God factor needs to be removed. And so this is what you're left with. But I'm not quite done yet, because if the God factor isn't there, then man becomes perfectible, and the nature of man's not flawed, and so the operating assumption is that man doesn't necessarily ascend or grab power because human nature is basically good, but society corrupts it, and so you don't need any vertical constraints on power. In fact, checks and balances become irrelevant, and ultimately there's really no social compact that's left at all. And so if you are working toward the secularist form of government and you work backwards from the U.S. constitutional structure as it's designed, this is what you're left with. A document that has some structure written in it and leaders. And so if you begin to just work backwards, you can build from the remnants, which is not much, of the U.S. constitutional structure, and build backwards a secular socialist society, where leaders say what the Constitution means, they tell the people what's going to happen, they influence these four spheres of society, society becomes planned, ruled by elites, and it leads to all these various things. So I hope this visual approach of both what it looks like from scratch as well as working backwards from the U.S. system really clarifies how very, very, very different this is than how the American experiment was conceived and designed. My name's Craig Seibert. Thanks for listening.